Now, inside of our guidance system, let me relocate myself here. Inside of our guidance system, this gives us the ability to look at all of those levers plus a couple that we were able to look at and identify in the mission control on that landing page and see how they impact the business at the same time. So it gives you the ability to pull all those levers individually, independently, together, in all sorts of different combinations. So the first thing that we see, and we'll come back to this graph in a second, but we want to set a time frame, generally 30 days, looking at that over the course of a month or a week. Obviously, you can play around with this all you want. And this net margin objective, it pulls through from that mission control on the homepage, but you can change it. And that effectively actually becomes a lever that we want to be able to pull. We'll come back to the rest of these. What this tells us, and again, this is using math. This is taking the emotion from setting ad budgets and trying to understand how to intentionally drive profitability, and throws it out the window. As this company, if they are spending $0 in advertising, which we know in most consumer brands is not the case, and in their case, it's not the case, they have to generate $262,000 in a month in direct-to-consumer revenue. So that's taking into account their B2B revenue with the B2B margins, which are different. You will have seen, or if you have B2B revenue, we will have talked about that in the onboarding. You will have seen that. So they have to generate $262,000 in direct-to-consumer revenue in order to accomplish a 10% net margin. Now, if that number changes, these outcomes change. But for sake of discussion, we'll leave that at 10%. What happens though is as we start sliding this slider, you'll see on our x-axis here, our horizontal axis, we have ad spend, and on our y-axis, our vertical axis, we have return on ad spend. So what this does is it shows us the relationship between our advertising dollars, how we build our ad budgets, and how they need to perform in order to create this net profit outcome. Really, really, really important. So for this company, if they spend $6,000 in a month, they have to achieve a 45.77 return on ad spend to get to a 10% net profit. Obviously, that's not realistic for pretty much any company on the planet. As we start to continue to slide this, we get into, you get to see the relationship between the return on ad spend and how it comes down dramatically as we increase our ad budgets. This how it works for every company on the planet. Now, for your company, these numbers will be different, but this curve is the exact same. It's how it is for ExxonMobil. It's how it is for the dry cleaner down the street. It's how it is for your company. Certainly how it was for BottleKeeper. So as we move this slider, we get to see how our needed return on ad spend, the minimum return on ad spend, what that is based on the ad budgets we've set. Now, these numbers underneath are the actual numbers from this last period. So we're looking at this at 30 days. This is what they actually spent in the last 30 days, $56,000. So if they want to increase their net profit based on the changes and things that we have in the system, they either, if this is unrealistic, the 6.67 is unrealistic in order to get to a 10% profit, net profit, they either need to consider increasing their ad budgets, or maybe they want to test increasing their prices. Say they want to test a 20% price increase. What that will do is it shows you how that needed performance, how that minimum return on ad spend can come down with that price increase. If they want to look at a discount, see how it goes in the other direction. See how much more difficult it gets to acquire a customer profitably, achieving this outcome with a discount in place. A couple of other items here. This actually shows them how their conversion rate on their website can change. The purpose of this is to create guardrails. So with this 20% price increase, their conversion rate, which is 0.8 in the last 30 days, can actually drop to 0.54. Anything above 0.54 is net positive for the business. It's adding margin dollars to the business. Really, really important that we understand how these things change. And again, if we look at this as a negative, conversion rate goes up. And if you're going to test a discount and you think you're going to get better performance as a result of that, you now know exactly what that performance has to be in order to be net positive, exactly where the ROAS needs to change in order to be net positive. Other changes they can make, they can go through the P&L and look for opportunities to cut expenses, remove an office. If it's a team member or two, if it's a contractor, whatever that is for your business, you can look and see, this is another lever you get to pull. You can look and see how changing expenses impacts the company. So, let's say they want to test a slight price increase Now, we're in the range with some price cuts, a slight price increase of being where they were for the last 30 days. We're in that ballpark with ad spend and with return on ad spend. So going to consider hiring another person, see how that changes. Just get an understanding of how adding and removing expenses to the business impacts your ability to operate profitably, to run profitable revenue. Another option that we have in here that we added recently is specifically applicable to tariffs. Now, tariffs impact cost of goods. So if we know, and appreciating that the dynamic nature of tariffs right now, this video is being shot in May of 2025. If we today think that we're going to have a 30% cost of goods increase, how does that impact all this data? How does it impact our ability to operate profitably? And if we're going to test increasing our prices with that tariff considered, how do all of our performance metrics need to change in order to pay for that thing, to offset the cost of the tariff? So again, the point here is to just give you the ability to understand how ad budgets impact the business, how they need to perform in order to reverse engineer this outcome, this 10% net margin outcome. Again, you get to change that to whatever you want. That is also a lever. Say this is unrealistic and you want to test maybe getting to a 7% net margin. Pull all these levers, see how they impact the business, and then let's follow along in real time in our command center.